All right, so let's see. We are on our second week, and so we'll go in there. Week number 2 is mostly design in the database, right? And what options do we have to do that? So first of all, let's take a look at use case analysis. This is topics that you might have covered already in other courses ad nauseum. If you've done 5500 or 4550 or 4500, you've definitely done this. That the first part of any project is meeting with your clients and coming up with a requirements document, right? What are we going to build, right? And what is our timeline? What is it that we need to agree on building? And there's all sorts of types of requirements. Some very vague, very high level, business requirements. Some of them more concrete, things that actually can be represented in some user interface. Others that are based on some kind of quality, something less tangible, but nevertheless that might not have any physical representation, but nevertheless can be measured somehow as either functional requirements or non-functional requirements. But in general, what we like to be able to capture are user requirements, right? So that from the point of view of those folks that are going to actually be using the system, what are their pain points? What is it that they like of what the current system that we're trying to replace? What things that they don't like, and perhaps there might be multiple instances that we interview them or follow them around and jotting down what their behaviors day to day is, and we capture all these requirements, which at the end there'll be some document, some requirements document at the end. Typically, some kind of a living document, meaning that somebody's going to be responsible for keeping up that requirement. Requirements tend to become stale very quickly, and they tend to change over time, and that there's a process in place to manage the evolution of those requirements. Also, depending on the type of methodology they're using, waterfall, agile, whatnot, how best that maps to your particular organization. So typically it involves a lot of face-to-face interviews where we're talking to folks that have never written, don't know anything about software engineering. So we have to, not use any jargon, use terms that are common in their particular domain. That they don't even know about the process of gathering requirements. They might even know that we're gathering requirements. So we're not asking, give me the requirements. This is what are requirements? I don't know what that even is. So as opposed to sitting down and say, okay, tell me how the business is run, or what is that you do? What are the things that you do day to day? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Right. So those kinds of questions, and us being a good listeners and trying not to bring our own opinions, our own biases, perhaps because of we might be too knowledgeable of the domain, right? And we might have all sorts of preconceived notions on so many other businesses that we've looked at, so from a point of view, it is good, right, that we bring a lot of expertise, but also we like to know, specifically what are their problems. So we're looking for things that I want to be able to do this. I need to do that. What does the user want to do? So it's centered around the user. What are they doing, right? So when you're doing an analysis, you're looking to try to identify what are the boundaries of the system, even though the system might be interacting with a whole bunch of other things. What is it that we're building, right? And what are the dependencies with other things that are out there? Some APIs, some infrastructure, some legacy systems that is holding data somewhere else. So what are the dependencies? And we're looking to identify also the audience, right? What are the different types of folks that are using this system, and the different what is common to all of them, what is very specific to a particular type of audience, and what are the various actors? What are the human actors and the non-human actors that interact with the system? and then create narratives, short 1-paragraph, 2-paragraph narratives on the things that they do, right? What are the things that they're trying to achieve, and also provide perhaps step-by-step description on how is it that they do this, right? They look up an order, they verify the order, they see the status of the order, and now they want to change the status of the order, right? So all step by step on how they interact and how the system responds, right? So this is a very common first step on designing and coming up with all these use cases, and the use cases are going to be the basis by which we're going to be implementing the database, right? The database is going to be an instantiation of those use cases, right? It's going to determine whether we normalize certain things, whether an attribute is either an attribute or a class, right? So it will drive these kinds of things. All the restrictions and validations and the constraints that we're going to put on the database are going to fall directly from these requirements, right? If based on some user requirements, a database might have a redundancy. But if you change the requirements, then it's no redundancy, right? So the question on whether you normalize or not, or because you're trying to remove any redundancies or inconsistency, it's based on the requirements, right? And there is no one design, right? From usually because you've done this so many times, you've done some designs, you already have a class diagram in your head, right? Because you've done this so many times, right? You're an expert at a particular domain. Right, you know that in movies, there's actors, there's a plot, there's a whole bunch of thumbnails and posters, and you already know the domain by heart. You can just write it out in your sleep. But it might be that the requirements are completely different this time around, right? And the domain, the class diagram that you would normally think of, actually doesn't apply to the particular requirements of that client, right? So you need to redesign the database, right? Because they don't fall exactly into your preconceived notions of that particular domain. So there are templates that you can use to describe these things. So here's a very abbreviated template. The name of the use case. Typically, these are a verb phrase, right? The actor wants to see their profile, or the fan wants to review a movie, right? So these are verb phrases. Typically, who's doing the action, what action they're taking, and what are they operating on, right? It's a verb phrase. Two nouns and a verb, perhaps, right? And then a short description, maybe a paragraph or so, that kind of gives a context of in what context is this happening, any preconditions that we were assuming. How did they get here, right? They need to have an account. They need to be logged in. They're already at the shopping cart, all right? They're already added things into shopping cart, right? So assuming all that, right? Then you can describe that the user or the customer is trying to remove an item from their shopping cart. That's a use case, right? How do they do that? Well, assuming that they're already at the shopping cart, okay, well, they would tap on, they would select the item and then click on remove or something, whatever, right? And then you would describe step by step, what the actor would do, how the system would respond back and forth, and then the assumptions of what's the state of the system afterwards. There's the item is no longer listed in their shopping cart. One less item, the total has recomputed. Recalculated, the tax has changed, whatever, right? What are the post conditions of having done that action? So typically, you would cover and describe all the happy path, right? If in a perfect world, right? If nothing went wrong, this is what would happen. But certainly, there'll be all sorts of things that could go wrong, and you would describe it in alternate paths, right? And you would say, based on step 2, the customer was trying to add an item, but we were out of stock, right? So in a happy world, we never run out of stock, right? But it happens, right? That they were looking that there were 3 left, but when they clicked add to cart, somebody else grabbed those 3, right? That's an edge case, right? That the user is human, right? They're slow, They have we just have these two fingers. They have, is it the way Elon Musk explained it? It's, we have these two meat sticks, right? And our output throughput is very, very slow, right? So anyway, so how does the system deal with those edge cases? So all those edge cases would go in the alternate paths. Saying, if on step 3 this happened, then this is how it would be handled. In step 1, if this happened, then something else, this is how you would handle it. There's quite a few other templates. Typically, each organization will have their own templates. And so use whatever template your organization uses. There's tons of them out there. You can download all sorts of PDFs. Here's another one. User stories are a little more verbose, a little more vague. Usually, especially if you're in Agile, you tend to describe things fairly vague, right? You don't actually design something until it's time to actually implement it. Oftentimes because things change. Requirements change, and by the time you're actually going to implement it, the requirements have changed on you. So why even bother spending time designing it for something that by the time you get there, the requirements have changed. So typically, user stories might capture something very vague, enough to give you some confidence that if I'm going to build it, I would know how to build that, right? I've built a lot of things similar. I have confidence I could build that, right? Typically, some of these user stories might have several risks associated with it, whether it's a technology that we don't know, or teams that don't know a particular aspect, or we need to train folks, or that something might be too costly, or the time is not enough for building this. So there might be a lot of risk associated to some of these stories. So typically those might be prioritized earlier, or somebody might be assigned to do a time box sometime and go off and do a prototype on this, right? Enough that gives you confidence that when we are going to build it, we will be able to build it. Enough just play around with this proof of concept enough that by the time we actually build it, right, we feel comfortable that we could be able to build it. So yeah, there's lots of documents that might be in multiple levels of details and drafts and whatnot. Folks might be assigned to own these documents and their life cycle as they continue to evolve over time. Here's some common use cases. In Amazon, a user might want to track an order. They might want to change their shipping. They want to change their billing. They want to check their status, cancel orders. Notice the verbs and the objects. Online purchases. Typically, we only capture use cases that are interesting for that particular domain, right? That is specific to that particular domain, and we leave out all the things that are trivial, right? So we're not going to capture login or submitting a form or registering or profile unless there's something very peculiar about your profile, right? But things that are trivial, right, that are common across all applications, we don't typically capture those, right? We just assume that you can register, that you can log in, that there's a place where you can look at your profile, right? And typically we focus more on something that is specific to your particular domain, right? So when you do your design for this class, for your project, please don't describe trivial use cases, all right? So here's one of them, Fish 360. It's a website that a friend of mine and I we're working on, like a social networking for professionals, fishermen. I'm a fisherman. So the system is called Fish 360. The author is Billy Squire, John be good. And so here's a very, very brief description of what the system is, who's this for, the organization, National Oceanographic Association, when it was created, and then the different system actors, who are the human actors who are interacting this. Who's the audience, right? A fisherman, a sponsor, an end user. So fishermen, they want to be able to plan fishing trips. They want to take pictures of their fish, take notes on their trip, post their experience on the web. Yeah, and now user, end user, typically there might be users that are meant for the folks that are outside of the organization, and there are end users, users who are inside of the organization, right? So there might be folks that are inside the building, right, that are building this application. There might be administrators, there might be HR, there might be folks that, legal, folks in design that are using the system, right? But and those are a small audience, right? That's usually a very small audience. But then there's the end user. Typically, we refer to folks out there that might be using the system live, right? And these might be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people using the system, right? Typically, when you're designing applications for different audiences, you might make different decisions depending on who your audience is, right? If the audience is folks that are in-house, right? You might be less, less markety, right? You might tend to have user interfaces that are heavy with data, right? That lots and lots of tables. They don't need to look any particularly pretty, as opposed to when you're developing for folks out there. Typically, it's more markety. There's a lot more use of white space. A lot prettier, right? There's a lot more design that goes into something that is meant to be used by your end users, right? I might be paying for this, right? So depending on the audience, you might have different requirements as well. For instance, if you have in-house, you might dictate, for instance, that have to use a particular browser, right? You might be more stringent on the requirements of your audience, right? Your in-facing audience, but when you're facing the outside, you can't require anything, right? You don't know who's going to hit your site. You can't. You need to be able to be more graceful. So here's a use case: searching a location. Description: the fisherman enters a city, town, state, address, zips, searching for fishing information, preconditions. Step by step, the fisher enters a location, and the system responds with a map. A fisher selects a location, and then it displays details about that location of interest. Maybe show tide information, wind, water temperature, all sorts of things. Other fish that you've caught there too. Planet trip. So these are various use cases, and you might use a very brief graphical representation of these use cases. This is a very kind of not very useful diagram, other than giving you a graphical representation of very quickly to see if my use case is listed there. So wait, where's my use case, right? Typically, you would be using this to present to folks, stakeholders who are paying for this, right? Who might have a vested interest in those two use cases up there, and there might be somebody else in the audience who has some vested interest on those other three use cases down there, right? Yeah. And you, as a designer, you want to communicate that everybody's being taken care of, right? Everybody who has a vested interest in the application, that we've got you covered, right? So this is kind of like a checklist. Yes, we're doing all these features are listed there. Anyway, so here are just some examples of other types of systems, ATMs, withdrawing cash, and whatnot. All right. So one of the first things that we ask you for your project when you're designing this is that you would provide a use case analysis. Right? You would identify the actors, at least 2 human actors, right? And that you would provide a use cases for each one of them, right? At least 3 or 4 use cases for each one, and that's going to drive the design of your database, right? So, for instance, there has to be a very clear path that goes from a particular use case. This is how I am modeling in the relational database, right? This is what the data model is based on those use cases. All right.